target a Nigerian stronghold in Benoni on the East Rand.
Khalil.
They suspect more girls and children are held here.
Lima, Mike, 062 is a wit BMW. Dis die Nigerian.
Several more girls are found, some as young as 12. In this room, an East Rand businessman is found having sex with a 15-year-old girl. He's arrested and charged with statutory rape.
Speeltjies wat hulle die cocaine opsit en lyne sny, dan sny slit van die speeltjie af. Die covers wat hulle gebruik daarvoor.
These children are told to go out to the street, stand on the corner. So it's in the community's face, it's in the authorities' face.
It was certainly an eye-opener, Adolf, to watch that snippet from that documentary. It's not scenes that we used to see play out every day. As the producer of that documentary, as the CEO and executive producer of Joburg Today, why did you deem it necessary to have that insert on this show?
Well, I think it begs the question. 15 years ago, when I filmed that documentary and saw what was happening on the streets of Rosettenville, that gave rise to a much, much bigger story at the end of the day, is not any different from what's happening today in Rosettenville. And the people of Rosettenville have now simply spoken up and said enough's enough. And again, it begs the question, what has changed in 15 years? If the authorities have been aware of this problem for 15 years,
Indeed.
How come it's not resolved?
Indeed, a very, very important question which authorities need to answer. But I want to ask you, what took you to Rosettenville in the first place? It's not common knowledge that there's a drug problem in Rosettenville to everyone.
Well, at the time, I was actually working on another crime-related story in Rosettenville, and came across, working undercover with a policeman at the time, came across this young prostitute who was on the street. She was quite well known to the police working in the area. And she, on a couple of occasions over a period of 4 or 5 days, repeatedly came to the car and told us about her sister that she was looking for. Mm-hmm. And, you know, policemen who end up dealing with people on the street, informants and such, sometimes they have to hear something for a very long time before they can actually react on something.
Now that's sad.
But to me, as a newcomer to that scenario and to that environment, it really popped out, and I arranged to have a private meeting with her and get to understand what was the story behind this, her sister that went missing. And she was all about finding her sister, who had ended up being kidnapped by a Nigerian child sex syndicate operating not just in Johannesburg but throughout the country. Mm-hmm. We eventually found her sister down in Durban.
So in other words, you're saying you played a very prominent role in locating this abducted person?
Well, it was one of those things where it's a story that flows out of a story. But the reality was I was able to, back then, take the information to the then Commissioner of Police, Perumal Naidu, who was the Gauteng Commissioner of Police at the time. And he put together a team. The team, through the work we did together and the undercover filming I was able to do with the team, essentially resulted in a documentary which also saw the police team receiving a United Nations award for the work they had done in dealing with this particular syndicate.
Certainly a huge breakthrough also in helping another human being at the end of the day. But just tell us a bit, how much of persuasion did the police need to actually take this assignment on?
Well, not a lot. The thing is, you know, when you do something in video, you tend to have, you know, all the right things. You have the voice, you have the visual, and if you combine the two, you have a story that people can quite easily believe, you know, if it is well presented. And the reality was, I had already done quite a bit of work at the time, capturing content to present to the police commissioner, and that made, I think, the decision quite easy for them to spend the resources at the time that they did, in order to put a task team together and tackle the problem head on. The sad part of it is the net result of that exercise: people were arrested, people were prosecuted, But today we have exactly the same scenario with the same modus operandi working in an area like Rosettenville. And again, the question has to be asked, what really changed in 15 years?
Sure. And I'm going to come back to that. I want to talk about this breakthrough that you experienced 15 years ago in helping locate that abducted person. Tell us a little bit more about the finding of that bust. What really came to the surface for police? What did they discover when it came to the drug syndicates operating in Rosettenville?
Well, I think sadly there was a big realization that no drug syndicate can actually operate unless they have the people in law enforcement actually being sometimes part of the team. That's a harsh realization for policemen who are real policemen, and having to realize that part of the problem they're dealing with is sometimes some of their colleagues.
Fighting their own kind.
And that, I think, is a very, very difficult thing for them to have to deal with. I think it puts the police on a back footing in terms of the work that they have to do and that they're mandated to do. At the same time, it's also about how the community decides to actually involve themselves in their own community. Because the reality is that the signs of these things is what's been experienced by a community on a daily basis. And it simply comes back to the old adage, you know, if good people do nothing, you know, crime will prosper.
The current situation, Rosettenville, has been up in flames. The burning question remains the same. What is being done to deal with the drug syndicates and to fight prostitution in that area and pumping? What do you make of how the authorities are currently dealing with the situation, the new dispensation, the new administration that has come into effect?
I think there's a lot more qualified people out there to answer that question. But what I can say from a journalistic perspective is quite simply this. The players that have the ability to change the status quo as far as crime and criminality is concerned, not just in Rosettenville, but in the whole of Johannesburg and the country for that matter, has to do with attitude. It has to do with commitment, and it certainly has to do with the quality of the people that are given the responsibility to fulfill that mandate at the end of the day.